From the center of the galaxy, this is ForceCenter, a show about Star Wars, pop culture, and the ultimate adventure, life itself. I'm Joseph Scrimshaw.
I'm Ken Napzok.
And I'm Jennifer Landa.
And this particular episode of ForceCenter is Questions of the Everything. We don't always have to say it like Palpatine, but hey, it's fun. This is our show where we take some questions from our patrons on Patreon. We have thrown the gates wide and said we would love to talk about Star Wars. We're still catching up from the old strikes. We'd love to talk about any other pop culture that you want to talk about. And hey, if you just want to talk about life, books, movies, philosophy, whatever, bring it to us. We love talking about all sorts of different things, and we like being able to kind of place Star Wars not in a vacuum, but Star Wars as it relates to everything else in the world too. So that's what we're doing here on Questions of Everything. But first, we want to let you know that today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Who knows what else? Maybe you have a microwave that will read you a book. I don't know. Anyway, the recommendation this week is Bloodline by Claudia Gray. We had a great time on our deep dive Star Wars show talking about the New Republic, and Bloodline's a really great look at the waning days of the New Republic. You can download your free audiobook today by going to audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. One more time, that's audibletrial.com/ForceCenter for your free audiobook. Ken, we also have an ask.
We do have an ask. We are promoting our Patreon page right now, patreon.com/ForceCenter. Things have changed over there a little bit, and for the better, we think, but we're trying to put an emphasis on our paid supporters. We're trying to reach 400. We're very close in the 380 range. If you help us hit that goal, and at any monetary amount, you can sign up at any level, we will be unveiling ForceCenter I was going to say the return of commentaries. We've done two commentaries in the past, Last Jedi and Phantom Menace. They're up on our YouTube channel if you dig in deep into that playlist there. But we're going to do new ones. And maybe it could include revisiting those movies. We do have the 25th anniversary of Phantom Menace, but that will be decided by you. If we reach that goal, Patreon supporters will help us choose the movie that we're going to do a commentary track for Patreon supporters, and also be available to the public in a special way. Stay tuned for that information. But it all begins if you help us reach 400 paid supporters on patreon.com/ForceCenter.
Excellent ask. Just very well delivered. Like a commercial on a cable channel. I feel like I want to buy whatever. Yeah, Lightning, Ozempic, whatever. Whatever. It only came to mind because I heard a lot of commercials for Ozempic. Controversial topic we're not discussing today. Instead, we're discussing these great questions. We've got one from Elias. We're starting with a Star Wars question. And I want to be very clear that when we put out calls for questions on Patreon, we ask people to let us know their opinion. Is there a reason that they're asking? Elias has asked his question in such a way as to make their opinion very, very clear, which we welcome. So here's what Elias has to say. I have a question about the Jedi Order. Do you think there will be a series or movie in which they get called out on their destructive method of mining the galaxy for gifted children and breaking up families to recruit and advance their ranks? I would like to see some pushback on their taking toddlers with abilities away from their family and their community. Jedi who want to take on a Padawan should have to relocate to the planet where the gifted child lives and train them close to their home so they can maintain and even celebrate their connections to family and community. Maybe I'm imagining something other than Jedi, but I would like to see evolution in thought by the new generations. Maybe Rey could do it. She seems capable of discerning between the danger of obsessive attachment and the vital importance of human connections. There is a lot there to discuss, as well as just getting to the straightforward question that Elias starts with about storytelling with the Jedi dealing with this. But Jennifer, I want to start with you because you are the person among us who has actual children, not just stuffed animals and plays I sometimes refer to as my child. How have you wrestled over the years for yourself with the Jedi tale of them asking parents if they would like them to take the child and train them? Has that been a difficult story for you to wrestle with as a parent over the years?
It never occurred to me until I became a parent and I watched The Phantom Menace. And I went, oh, wait a minute, this is what's been going on. It was like an awakening that I had. I was like, God bless me that she could give up her child. But the thing about that story is that it was for his good, right? Not
Mhm.
obviously we know the good of the galaxy, but also like his life. She
Mhm.
wanted to give him a better life. Now, can we assume that? No, we know that not all Jedi children have come from that type of a situation. So if I think of it like that, like, oh, they're giving them a better life, but if some of these kids have good relationships with their parents and, well, have like a strong community, a healthy life, a healthy community, right? And then you take them away from that, that seems horrible. So I was trying to think of it in my mind about like Harry Potter.
Mm.
You have all different types of talented magical children, right? Gifted children who come from all different backgrounds. um and it works because they still have that tie to their family. I mean, that's the whole thing, right? Harry's
Mhm.
one of the people that stays behind because he can't go home during the holidays with his family. So other families take him in. So there can be a place for that, but it does get a little weird, which I think that it should be explored in a movie or a series.
Yeah, great. Oh, I can't wait to discuss more how you'd like to see that and what you want to be wrestled with. Ken, what's your big picture with the Jedi philosophy and practice of offering to take children
Yeah, right.
at a young age?
I think that's one of the key words. It is phrased as a choice and a question of the families. And I want to also shout out Elias is very active in our community, and this is a great question. So nothing should be taken as a debate or how dare
Mm.
you
Mhm.
suggest this last. But I think there's some questions. This is also an in story conversation that I like
Mhm.
because I think outside the story, it's just told. I've always taken it, and even as the story has advanced and people ask these questions, this is something that pops up every now and then. Even in my real life, I have a friend who debates this with me all the time. It's a ramped up the morality tale about choices and destiny and fate and good and light. And I think this is one way to ramp that up to really
Mm.
ratchet that up. But in terms of the story, yeah, there is a lot of this stuff, and I think people do question this, and I think you could point it out. And I like where he ends up. As we'll dive more deeper into this question about Ray and. Actually, Jen, your thought of a school year is not a bad idea, but I think it's misunderstood. I don't think they go around kidnapping children. Palpatine does. I think there's a
Mhm.
greater cause, and you go to Harry Potter. I'll go to Men in Black. I'll go to Men in
Mm.
Black, where Tommy Lee Jones and I know there was comics and stuff before, but I'm going to the 1996 movie. Tommy Lee Jones, Will Smith. You got to disconnect from everybody, but don't you want to be part of the bigger picture? Don't you want to be part of the bigger cause? Yesterday, you thought we're the only ones here on Earth. Now you know there's an entire galaxy, and you're part of something bigger, and we need you. But it requires the sacrifice. There's not a lot of real world examples that couldn't be picked apart. I go to like. Cold War era Russian gymnasts being ripped out of their homes at 3 to train to be in the Olympics. That's not a great example. That's one of the only real world ones I can think of. So I'll start there, where I defend the Jedi a little bit on this. I think there's more choice. I also think it's dangerous it's a fine line. And if you send the kid home for the summer, they don't come back.
Mm.
Then what are you going to do with your Jedi ranks? But again, look at Luke and Grogu. I think that's going to be part of our conversation.
Mhm.
Definitely more to analyze, but I'll start there if that makes any sense. I sound like I'm trying to be political on both sides of this fight, but
No, I think you're being nuanced
yeah,
and thoughtful.
yeah.
Mhm.
I don't
And
think they're kidnapping kids. I don't think they're going around scouring, going yoink. Thank you. I think they're
I to me that is the starting place of the discussion, is because I think there's a lot that's interesting to discuss it about the morality of it, about how much is this a heightened fantasy versus how
Mhm.
much is this a how would we feel about this in the real world
Yeah.
if something like it existed, if an order you believed in came around and said I can give this kid his great life and you as a parent have to make the decision. There's a ton to discuss about it, but I always want to start at the point. Elias is asking important questions and
Mhm.
offering his opinion, and I got no problem with that. And I'm not saying this about Elias, I'm saying this about other conversations I've had where people just start with they're kidnappers, they kidnap children. And sometimes I feel like people mean that as a heightened joke of like it amounts to kidnapping. And then I think I'm talking to sometimes some people like, you haven't watched The Phantom Menace in 25 years, have you? They don't actually kidnap children. They go to parents and say, your child is force sensitive. Would you like us to raise? We are offering to raise them in the Jedi Temple. We think they've been called by the Force, and parents can say no. I mean, that to me is this story, and there's plenty to debate within that. But I get frustrated when the conversation is about kidnapping, because I don't think that's the story, and I think the interesting things are to discuss are after we all agree they're not kidnapping, they're presenting parents with a choice, and that is morally fascinating and questionable enough by itself without calling the Jedi kidnappers.
Yeah.
Right.
Was that political, or was that a little too hot? I get defensive about the Jedi.
No, I think it's accurate. I won't bring them into it, but I've had a real world discussion ongoing with a friend for a while where it's just like, dude, that's not what they did. They didn't kidnap. There's a choice. And also, hey, in our lives, there's sometimes you have to do some sacrifices for your greater goals or destinies, right? You want to be, I did a comedy show at Christmas, great for those who went to the show. That was a fun holiday. I left. I was gone. I was on the road because I wanted to. There's the dedication question that sometimes I think I have with some of the conversations.
Yes, and I feel strongly about that. That's my not Men in Black or Harry Potter, but the celebrities I've read about in life who who put their career above everything. We'll get back to that in a minute. I think one thing I want to be sure to say at the beginning of our conversation is like a lot of things in Star Wars, there is storytelling in books and comics if you want to dig deeper. I don't think there is one story in modern canon that I'm aware of that is like, a Jedi's choice or, the parent of a force sensitive choice that really that the sole point of the story is to deal with this. But there's some great stuff in the High Republic in particular with different characters wrestling with this. There's a great thread with, if my memory serves me correctly, the character of Ernestra Rowe, who becomes a full Jedi Knight at 16. She's like a wonderkin, and she has some reflection about how things were easier for her it came to her easier, but also one of the things that she reflects on is that her culture, the Mirrorland culture, they think highly of the Jedi, they think highly of being force sensitive, and it's a celebration when the Jedi come. And she has like the utmost support from her culture and from her family that she didn't get to know. Whereas other cultures, it might be a little bit more of a conflict, and it might be something that a Jedi has to wrestle with, wondering, why did my parents agree to this? Why did my culture agree to this? And she thinks of it as this boon that her culture, she's totally supported, and if ever goes back, will be celebrated as one of the ones who got this wonderful honor. So there's that in High Republic. I think it's in the recent Battle Scars book where Cal Kestis is kind of wrestling with, I didn't get to choose. My parents chose. I think for older storytelling, there's a great Obi-Wan and Anakin comic by Charles Soule where Anakin really considers walking away. I think that's an important part of the discussion too. There's the all of the moral questions, all the attachment questions of should a parent be making this choice for an infant? But it's also the Jedi throughout their training are like, you're not a captive. If this isn't for you, leave. If Anakin said at 13, I'm done, nobody's going to stop him from walking away. So I think that's the other thing for me of like, there are little bits and pieces of this story. Even in Kenobi, the television show Kenobi, I really liked hearing the philosophy that Kenobi sort of sees it as, I did have to leave my family of birth, and I have foggy memories of them, but then I got this new family, and the Jedi are family. And that's, I think, a perspective on it. So not one full story like Elias is asking for, but lots of bits and pieces spread throughout, I think, in storytelling. Ken, how do you feel about some of the bits and pieces that you've maybe read in the publishing side wrestling with this?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that young Anakin and Obi-Wan series. That was a long time ago, huh? It's like 2015 or so. I think they wrestle with enough, and I'm okay. By the way, I'm okay with if there's more stories where this is directly called out. I think that's part of Elias's question. I think it'd be interesting to see the Jedi Order wrestle with it, answer it, and maybe they're. I'm not opposed to some sort of changes. Without a doubt, Rey has some thoughts on connection and community, and being alone versus being part of something bigger and part of a found family. So she's obviously going to have that in there. But I'm trying to think. I was trying to run through some examples, like you said, and I don't remember a lot of the High Republic ones. It's been a bit, so I'll have to dive in. But yeah, more is okay. Pressing them on it is a little bit.
Yeah,
is fine for me.
Absolutely. And as Elias brings up in the question, some of this is about attachment. I think it's the Jedi belief that training needs to happen when you're early, because the older the student is, the harder it is to get them to unlearn everything they have learned. So there's a Jedi belief, and it is better if they're younger. There's a responsibility to this power, and people who have this power should be taught how to use it. There's all that. But then there's also the attachment issue, and Ken, you kind of brought this up, and I want to dive deeper into it. To me, the removing them from the family is about starting them young. It is, I think, about that the fear of if you have a family you do anything for, is that a temptation to abuse your power. But the thing that I don't think as Star Wars fans we talk about as much, there's also it's a commitment. I think that's a part of the logic too, of like, it is like being asked to be, for two wildly different examples, a priest or an entertainer, a job that you are, whether you admit it or not, you are going to give your whole self to. Yeah. And is that fair to a family of birth, or more importantly, a family of choice? And I'm such a fan of earlier 20th century, mid 20th century entertainers, and you read about some of those people's life, and like, how did they accomplish all this? How did Dean Martin have 8 children and play Vegas every night? Well, because he prioritized one over the other. I'm sorry to bring Dean Martin into discussions of Jedi, but
he's a Jedi.
Jennifer, I'm curious what your thoughts are on that. Of there are some careers, even in our real life, where we try to have it all. We say we can have it all, but sometimes we just give ourselves entirely to the career first over family. How do you wrestle with that in terms of the Jedi's desire to be like, it's not even like, I can't have a spouse because I'll go crazy and kill somebody. It's like, I will never be home because they'll call me to do things, and I'll say, oh, sorry, did you want me to be there when our child was born? I got a planet to save.
Yeah, it's pretty terrible, actually. Like, I mean, there have been interviews with directors and some actors that I really admire, and their kids are not impressed because that movie reminds them of the year that their dad or their mom was gone, missed out on their things in their life. So I don't know. I was actually listening to a discussion about child influencers and how these parents, and if you think about child actors as well, kids say that they want to be the darndest things when they're kids, right? I want to be a mermaid. I want to be an astronaut, right? Giving them the power to choose that at such a young age is not a good idea because they don't know, right? And like they don't have the what is it, prefrontal cortex? It's not developed yet for them to make an informed decision. So then I think about the Jedi parents, the parents of these Force sensitive children, making this decision for their kids. Why would they do that? The only thing as a parent I can think about is that if you had this kid who is Force sensitive, who has all these extraordinary abilities, how are you going to parent that child? How are you going to have the skills to guide them in the right direction and have them not fall prey to, the whoever, right? Whether it's the First Order, Knights of Ren, whatever you want to say, right? I can't do that as a parent. I will give the Jedi my child because I believe they're going to steer my child in the right direction. That's how I wrestle that in my parent brain. I don't know. I got off on a tangent here.
No. I think it's really important. I think it's really important, and I can only imagine actually being a parent. But I there's a part of me that feels like I really defend this story point in Star Wars. I think it's tied up in interesting philosophy and morality. And there's also a part of me that I would tell Mace Windu, where to shove his purple lightsaber if he came for my baby.
Right, exactly, right.
So I understand that instinct, but then it is also like, if I knew I could not provide what the child needed, if the child would be confused by their powers, if the child would be a danger to themselves, if a child would be ostracized or manipulated
Right.
because of those powers. And I knew nothing about it, and I did not know how to help that child. Parents, correct me if I'm wrong, Jennifer, have to make decisions for their children. Maybe not
Yes.
decisions like this that are the entire fate of their life, but yeah. So I think about it from that point, and then I really think about it. You know, I have had times where I think I have, as an adult, prioritized career over everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is fascinating about the Jedi, and especially like by the time like, hey, you're 13, you could walk away now. You could go, wow, my parents made a bad choice and this ain't for me. Or you could say, yep, I'm going to do this. I'm going to believe in this philosophy where if anybody asks for help, I drop everything. Is it fair to me to have a partner that, you know, a part of my vow is, and by the way, you'll always come second.
Right.
And you know that about me from the beginning. That's a really interesting question to me. Ken, how do you feel about that one, about the balance of, you know, a Jedi is basically just somebody who says, my career always comes first, because it's not a career, it's a philosophy.
Well, we're getting real world real fast, aren't we?
Yep.
It's, as it should, because this is what Star Wars does, and I think this is the feeling. It's all mileage may vary. It's the Seinfeld story from the comedian doc of looking into the window as the Glenn Miller Orchestra goes through the snow to get to a show on Christmas night, and they see a family having Christmas dinner with fires and happiness and warmth, and one of the band members says, "Ugh, who could live like that?" That's me. I'm not close with family. I'd rather, you know, always prioritize career, not have children now by choice. So it's like, that I'd be okay with this, right? If this is what I wanted, if I had these powers, this is what I wanted to do. Other people wouldn't, right? And so I feel it, you know, if you're Anakin at 13 going, this doesn't feel right, then I think he has the right to say, I want to bow out, right? I'm okay with that. So, and you know, there's a lot of those. We don't know every situation here in the galaxy. Maybe it was a good idea to pull some of them from their families. Maybe it wasn't in other situations. That's the delicious complications of this situation. But if you're asking me, I think I am all about, to a fault, maybe, and maybe that's the problem. It's a fault, but I am all about, work first, because that's what's more fulfilling to me than family, and that's not the case for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a fascinating conversation by itself too. If you could have sort of a Jedi in relationships, if they're like, by the way, you know, I'm gonna bounce the second they need me.
Kind of bounce.
Yeah, this is not going to be, should I take that work call or should we go to the park like we talked about? Like, you know, and it is a story of lots of successful artists that they have found balance, but a lot of docs you watch of like, yep. Hey, open almost any book, and you'll see that, like, thanks to my spouse for letting me disappear for 6 months to write this book. You know, it is. It's, I think, close to my artsy heart. So Elias is also asking really about the future. We have on the horizon. Maybe we're going to see Rey handle these things differently. The age at which people begin to train, maybe revising the rules of attachment. Jen, what are your hopes for or thoughts for a new Jedi Order of how Rey might handle not just the starting children young, but the whole question of, is attachment forbidden the way it was in the old Jedi era?
That makes it so complicated, because if you do have attachment, your vision and judgment might be clouded, right? Is why a lot of times athletes have to go and live somewhere else away from their family while they are training and doing their sports, having their games,
Accurate.
whatever it is.
Yeah, accurate.
Right. So, I mean, because, or why artists or writers have to like literally shut themselves off from the world. It is seeing, especially as a mother, it feels like such a selfish thing to do. But because, I mean, and this is where I've watched Whiplash recently and also Anatomy of a Fall, where they both question, like, what does it take to be a great artist? Right? How much do you have to sacrifice of your personal life in order to achieve greatness? So the same thing can be said for the Jedi. What do they have to give up to be able to be present, to be available, to put their life on the line for the cause if they know that they have a family.
Yeah, and then that goes, I think, to that conversation in Attack the Clones that I think we kind of between Anakin and Padme on the refugee ship that we sort of I think a lot of times it's viewed as Anakin trying to rules lawyer around the Jedi by saying, like, so from a certain point of view, attachment and love, that's what we're all about. And I think that he's expressing the true Jedi philosophy of, like, it isn't about being cold and distant. It's just like the entire galaxy is our family and we care about everyone. And it's a selflessness to be there for everyone, and maybe we can't be there for that one person because we're trying to be there for everyone. I think that's the actual Jedi philosophy, which is really fascinating. In that particular instance, it is Anakin a little bit going like, so actually, good day. And
but then imagine being the partner of somebody like that. My poor husband. Whereas, like, that's really freaking hard. That's really hard because you feel like you're like everyone else comes first, so that could be played out actually in this new Rey movie, now that I think about it.
It certainly plays out in my life where there are times where, like, the best thing for me is I can create something I really believe in if I disconnect from the entire world for a week,
right?
And that is anyway, we'll get to Artist Center. Ken, what are your hopes or thoughts for the new Jedi Order, how Rey sets it up, how much maybe that film is dealing with the question Elias is asking about?
I think it could go that way from a certain point of view. I think it makes a lot of sense that we've talked about this before about both Luke, I think, questioning some things as you have the chance to rebuild something. Let's get it right? Let's look at the mistakes of the past. Rey's got the books. She might have, see what it actually meant, or go to the text and again, go into the connection angle. And there's something valuable about taking old institutions and finding new ways to them. And every generation has a different approach to it. I think I'm okay as an older generation person. Is that a phrase? We're like number 2 on the depth chart of generations of who are ready to go. Where I have a certain view of quote younger people and not their work ethic, but their approach to it. I saw a Jodie Foster quote recently this last week. I went, she ain't wrong, but this is also they're in the driver's seat, and what are they invested in? And what's changed is what you get back from what you put in is what needs to be questioned now. I had this conversation with my dad, like, no one wants to work. Now that's the narrative. A lot of people want to work, but they're discovering that there's what they're getting back from it isn't what it used to be. And maybe that was some of what was at play late in the Jedi Order, late stage Jedi Orderism. We'll talk that about. And so Rey has a chance to go, all right, if I'm going to ask this sacrifice from you, it's not like what have we done for you lately, but it's got to be you've got to want this, and I can't expect a Jedi Padawan in a new order is going to want it in the same way they did in the High Republic era. Because the situation around it has changed. So how do we find the best way forward is how I'd be interested. Now, is that scintillating dialogue for a film? Maybe not. But the themes behind it could easily be that, I think.
If it is a film about other people not wanting the Jedi to rise, this is a way to attack them and make it personal.
Yes. Yeah.
How do you recruit? Are you a warmongering recruiting machine? Like they can be criticized of being. It would be fascinating for me. Oh, go ahead, Ken.
Well, and I know we don't know Finn or John Boyega's involvement in the new film, but I hope that character goes on, and I hope Boyega's there because I think he's valuable to Star Wars. But he might be like Elias is saying here, like, and I'm not saying Elias is saying kidnapping. I'm double checking the question there, but like Finn might be like, hey, I don't like just taking kids and putting them into service. I have an issue with that.
That happened to me a little bit. Yeah.
A little bit. Yeah. Can we find a different way, or can we emphasize the choice? Yeah.
I could see a couple of things. I could see and I think it's a little bit what Elias is advocating for, of almost like a 2-step system where, hey, are you on Lothal and your kid is throwing rocks with his mind? We're going to send a Jedi envoy, and with your permission, the Jedi envoy will help you with that child. And then when the child is of whatever age your society deems it is time for a child to make a decision, then they can decide if they'll join the Jedi Order. Like if they had the numbers to basically be like, we'll partner with your community and help guide this child until they are of age to make a decision. I think that would be that would be interesting way to handle it. I think there could be that question of, is it really hard, for if Rey's going around the galaxy and she finds a 48-year-old, like, I've kind of always felt the Force, like, is it harder to train?
Right.
The 48-year-old is fascinating. And then for me, like, Elias brings it up. It's one of the things I'm most excited about Rey's story. I think the sequel trilogy is a beautiful tale of the need for individual choice and the need for community. It is so Rey's strength that she is strong. She is a fighter, but what she wants and needs is community. And to hear a voice, hear all the Jedi, and to hear "Alone, never have you been," still, moves me deeply. So she's got to have an opinion, as Elias is saying, about community. It would be interesting to me if she's like, this new Jedi Order is going to be more relaxed about attachment, or she could really come from the point of view of, like Kenobi is advocating for in the Kenobi TV series, of the Jedi are community. We're inviting you in to not to have to be disconnected from community and family, but to choose this community. And that's another thing that you get in the publishing side. All the tales of the Jedi kids being raised together and having community with one another. That's the society they live in. So I could also see Rey saying, I'm asking you to make a choice to join this family, this community of Jedi.
I like it.
Yeah, sorry. I'm thinking. I really like. There's something to there. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I just have a horrible vision of Rey and Finn sitting there going, "Hey, it's just us now. Everyone left. We gave them the choice, and they left."
Yeah, they're putting up flyers on galactic telephone poles, going, "Do you have feelings? Do you have weird feelings?"
Yeah, but they should be able to. Yeah, they should. I wasn't forced to go into comedy.
Yeah,
quite the opposite.
One other question for you both, pulling out of Elias's question, because Elias's central question is asking about movie or TV show really putting this practice under the microscope in analyzing is the morality of it. I think there's a possibility that Acolyte is going to wrestle with these issues, since it's set during the end of the High Republic, the beginning of the fall of the Republic, the beginning of the fall of the Jedi. We know from descriptions and from the trailer that we were lucky to see at Star Wars Celebration, and others might have seen in creative ways on the internet, that one of the central characters is somebody who questions the Jedi and has left. Ken, how much do you think that Acolyte could be a place where this practice of the Jedi is questioned and examined?
I think that's a great point. I think you have a perfect time to do it, because it is late stage Jedi Orderism, right? It is something that Leslie Headland has said. We're leading to what we know of in the Phantom Menace. We're trying to see how did they fall, and that's interesting. And then because it's I don't have the words right in front of me, but like a dark side focus story. Like what does that person or those characters believe about the Jedi Order to put them in that direction? What is truth? What is, good food for thought? And what is an absolute manipulation of it that would lead you down the dark side? And why there is no gray in this world, in this galaxy. I think it's a perfect place, and I actually kind of expect a little bit of that. Also, maybe a little bit in Skeleton Crew. If Jude Law's Force sensitive, and one of the kids is like, "I'd like to do that," and he's like, "Really? Do you? Let's run through what that means."
Let's talk about it. Yeah, I would love it if the Acolyte has basically, with character, plot, motivation, some of the discussions that we've been having. If there's a character who is like, I resent that my parents made that choice and I never would have made it, and I resent the way this is set up, and have a character like, Vernestra Rowe is actually having a character either like her or her have the other perspective of like, it was wonderful for me. It isn't right or wrong. It's different. It works differently for different people, and it is to be debated. But it'd be great to have that debate. People feel very strongly about it, as Elias's question demonstrates. Jennifer, do you have any hopes that the Acolyte will wrestle with these issues?
I think it's definitely going to be very critical like you're saying, Ken, very, very, because it is more dark side focused, right? And so I just think that they're going to, not negative portrayal, but I don't think they're going to be favorable of that tactic. So, but then I think of the Rey movie as a way to kind of like course correct and like, we know that this is what happened in the past. We're going to go forward and do things that are different, a more holistic approach to approaching becoming a Jedi. But yeah, this is why I'm like, I need to read the High Republic because this sounds so good.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. No, it's
one of our listeners actually shared with us a great way to like jump in, and I got to find that. I think I bookmarked it.
Yeah. I think I'm excited for the Acolyte to. I think it's going to beat up on the old Jedi a bit. I think there will definitely be some characters who have a Jedi justice for the Jedi point of view. I think that the new Jedi Order looks to me like it is going to really cast them as heroes. I think if you ever do want to experience that and you haven't read High Republic, don't even want to read all of it. You can just read Light of the Jedi, the first main novel. So good. And it really begins with, this is the Jedi when they're working right. This is the Jedi when they're focused and they're truly there to help the galaxy. And these are the heroes that then make mistakes. But sometimes Star Wars storytelling has moved on from this showing them as heroes to let's just focus on the mistakes. And I think that we could use a few more stories like Light of the Jedi that focuses on them. This is the baseline. They're heroes. And now here's all the ways that they can make mistakes and crumble and all that.
Yeah. Also, I want to point out as a counterbalance to all this, thanks to expanded modern storytelling in Star Wars, we know that Darth Maul was upset that he wasn't picked for the team, and it fostered a sense of revenge, anger, and darkness inside of him. So, if he had just been forced into the Jedi Order like he wanted, he might be okay.
Yeah, he got picked as a baby for his dodgeball team, and that was it. That was it. Where were the Jedi for him? Great question, Elias. Much respect to your perspective on it, and thank you for giving us such a great question to look at from lots and lots of different ways. Excited for future storytelling. With that, if you're listening to us on the old audio, we're going to take a quick break. If you're watching us on YouTube, we're just going to pause awkwardly for half a second and continue. Back in a moment. And we're back. We are having a lot of fun here on Questions of the Everything. We had a great deep dive Star Wars question, and now we are going to take a fun question about the world, and I'm sure we can spin it into Star Wars as well. This comes to us from Jared Kozal. Jared says, what are some of your favorite words to say, read, or just appreciate, and why do you love them? For clarity, I'm not referring to words you find yourself using, perhaps too frequently in conversation, though you can cite those if you wish, but words you just like. I tried to answer this question for myself, and I concluded that my favorite word in and of itself was incisive, which various dictionaries define as intelligently analytical and clear thinking, or impressively direct and decisive. I initially thought I loved it, primarily because that definition appealed to me, having a scientific background while also appreciating smart storytelling. I thought it represented an ideal of both, an ideal I strive for, as I can ramble a bit when I write, despite being more measured in real-life conversation. But on reviewing other words I had ranked high on my list, elucidate, perspicacious, incandescent, and halcyon, I noted a pattern of sharp C's and S's among them, which made me question if I was attempting to be overly incisive when I actually just like that particular sound. Funnily enough, another favorite word of mine is asinine, which means extremely stupid or foolish. Paired with incisive, those two words are nearly antonyms, but they both sound like they're cutting the air itself, which makes them feel particularly definitive in my mind, almost the light side and the dark side of that particular coin, if you will. Had to tie it into Star Wars somehow, says Jared. So based on their deeper meaning or just vibes, what are your favorite words and why? Note, I focused on English words here, but if you're so inclined, feel free to acclaim words from other languages if you choose. This is a great and fascinating and I think incisive question, Jared. Thank you very much. Jennifer, where do you start with this? When you saw this question, were you like, of course, here are my 5 words, or did you have to think about it?
I was so excited because I love language. I love words. I love lamb. And the reason why is because like words are just like, you can choose one word that encapsulates so much, right? I used to build like my vocabulary lists when I was younger because I wanted, especially like even now, like if I'm reading something and I'm like, oh, I don't know that word. And I would put a bunch of sticky notes around my home when I was a kid, like just to be like, oh, I want to incorporate this into my my vernacular. And like when I remember, like, I don't curse really, so when I heard Luke saying blast, I went, oh, I'm gonna use that. And to this day I will still say blast or frack from Battlestar Galactica, right? And that's why I love okay, I'm gonna stop. I'll come back.
No.
We'll
This
come
is
back.
great. I love to see the passion. Ken, are you at the same place of a passion for words?
No, this is an interesting conversation. First of all, Jared, this is just a beautiful essay on words here, and I love it. I in high school was very well read, was ahead of my class for years, was on a higher level of track learning or whatever to get to four-year universities. Then I moved to LA and I got a job in the public safety industry, and it's there's a lot I can say about it, and a lot of I have said here. I had a friend of mine who was a Cal Arts graduate, worked on a lot of things in the last few years in animation, and we were roommates at the time. And we had a conversation about 2002 where, like, he turned to me one day and he goes, "Hey, can I ask you something? Because you've been working there since '98, right? 4 years." He goes, "Do you feel stupider?" And I went, "Yeah. I don't know words anymore. I don't know. I don't read a lot. I still love reading, but I moved away from where I was in high school." And I know this sounds like a weird answer to Jared's question. Yeah, I love swear words. Those are my favorite words. We try to keep it clean here. I love funny words to me, or words that I think are fun to say, like aforementioned. He says halcyon. I love the halcyon days. That's one of I love that phrase. I love that. Words from other languages. Miércoles was my favorite to say when I took 2 years of Spanish. Wednesday. I just love this. A beautiful word to just roll out, and I'm not even saying it correct. I love stuff like that. So I don't have a favorite word that has some great meaning to me. I am a pretty straightforward dummy, and I mean that in the best way possible. It was my friend Dave. We've had this conversation even years later. Like it changed me. And I'm not saying the people around me were dumb or everything. It's just it is a different kind of. I used to not be allowed to swear as a kid. Jen, I got in trouble for saying a word once. Oh my God! I had a friend who swore in front of my mom, and she came run out of the house and kicked him out. I never got to be friends with him again. So I still didn't swear for a lot until like my mid-20s. And then once the floodgates opened, I love all kinds of swear words, including ones from UK that we don't really say a lot here. But I love it. And so it's like, yeah, that's where I go. Yeah. I had to be honest about that. I'm pretty straightforward. So aforementioned. There you go.
I think are unlocking lots of complications of words. Swearing's fascinating. Swearing for me was when I was quite young, my parents didn't swear as much, and then eventually became this is like getting your driver's license or shaving. You can do it when you're old enough.
You can do it.
And then like, all right, okay. And then long history of back and forth with swear words and their power and when you use them and when you don't and all that. That's a whole other question. Yeah. But Ken, I'm really intrigued by the path that you were describing, because I think as a kid, as I've said before, I wasn't immediately good at sports, and I was had negative experiences where I was told I wasn't going to be good at them. I shouldn't be good at them. And I loved naturally books and comic books. My brother taught me to reading a Electric Company magazine, a comic strip starring the Fantastic Four. Everything was geared very, very early on to reading and enjoying reading, and like you, Jen, discovering words and using them. And then there were places where that was good, and I was congratulated by teachers and writing, and sometimes with my parents. And then some slam into the brink wall using big words as a kid, $10 words. Who do you think you are? I never forget an early Thanksgiving with my larger family, who had a big mixture of what I will just generally say is the I don't agree with these, but the very social, like educated highbrow versus the I take pride in lowbrow, and if you can't say it in 2 syllables or under, you're wasting everybody's time. Like my family had some tension between those groups, the Sam Malones versus the Fraser Cranes
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
the world.
Yeah.
And
It's a great way to look at it.
my grandmother had made gravy, and it was settling really, really quickly, and there was a skin on top of it. And I remember I'd being like both fascinated and disgusting, and saying, "Oh no, the gravy is coagulating." And it was like a sitcom moment, a screech of Holly, like, "The hell did that kid just say?"
Oh,
What did
no.
you say?
And it was like, yeah, we don't, I don't know what that word means, but it was over 2 syllables, and we don't use that kind of language around here, kid.
Yes.
And
Yes.
being laughed at, and then also sensing a little bit from some of the relatives, a little bit of like, "Oh, who do you think you are, 9-year-old?"
Sure.
Coagulating. And I have had that throughout my life, because comic books, fantasy. I will never forget learning the word vainglorious from a Teen Titans comic book, and then trying to use that in just normal conversation of like, I don't know about that political candidate. Seems quite vainglorious, and people being like, what is it? Who does this kid thinks he is? So Jen, did you ever have any of that tension where you felt like loving words and using larger or more obscure words was accidentally this tension in somebody's sort of culture war?
Oh yeah, people used to say, "Oh, you're putting on airs." It was just like seen as just being, "Oh, you're snobby," or "Oh, you think you're better than everyone." So then I started to like kind of try and dumb myself down, or just not talk for a long period, for many years. I just wouldn't say anything. But then when I was around really, really smart, educated, wealthier people, then I felt like a dummy, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like I can't win." But my dad told me something that I think is really interesting when I was trying to do more like writing and reporting. He's like, you need to say it like you're telling a 7th grader. Use 7th grade language. You don't need to use all this flowery, complicated language. He's like, just tell it. You have 15 seconds to tell me that story. And I was like, oh, that's a different way to use language. It's actually much more difficult for me to just really to edit it in that way. So I don't know. I'm sure that there's a happy medium, but I love language. It's
Yeah. I think for me, a part of it is knowing. I don't think there's anything wrong with changing the way you use language based on where or when you're using it.
right.
Who you're having a conversation with. I think the division between college educated and people get by with meat and potatoes, I think that's unnecessary and hurtful. And there are people who have no access to education whatsoever and have read every word of George R.R. Martin's books and know the most obscure words to describe steak. It's to me an unhelpful, hurtful division. What's more important is what your journalist father is saying of like, who are you communicating with? In this particular instance, use direct, short words because the message is the most important thing.
Right.
Now, if you're writing a story and you a prose story and you want people to feel the words, you don't. Maybe it's not great to write. It was extremely painful, and and people felt the pain clearly. You want to write, it's visceral because the word in itself has power, and those are it matters on the context. Ken, what are your thoughts on that?
No, this is all great stuff because it goes into what you're both talking about. I think you're right, Joseph. There's this like, what are you, a smarty pants kind of attitude that is part of it that seeks to divide even further. And Jen, I've experienced the other side. I have a certain kind of brain. I hate puzzles, meaning like in video games. This is one of the reasons I don't like the Fallen Order game or Survivor. Like I got to do another GD puzzle to get to the door. Just get to the door. And I was playing a tabletop game once with some very smart people, one who worked for NASA, and I couldn't solve a puzzle, and they all snickered at me in front of me. I felt like a real dummy. And they all used fancy words to describe how I couldn't get through that puzzle. But who won the game in the end? Me, when I pulled a shotgun on the alien and we rolled 20 and I won it. And I literally threw my dice down, walked out of the house and said, game over, and I left. I was so pissed off. So it goes, the medium you're talking about, Joseph, is I think correct. It's part of the, who you're around, not changing who you are, but knowing your audience, know your intentions. And I don't swear here on ForceCenter because that's not our goals here. I could change and adapt. And And when I tell my story, I was around great people for 17 years, but for 17 years, I literally would get blank stares if I tried to use not fancy words, but just have different kind of conversations. The example I have is I was at the Red Robin bar. We're watching football. It goes to commercial. There's a talking dog on a commercial, which was, by the way, won this weekend too. We haven't changed in 20 years. And I looked up at and I was just like, oh my God, a talking dog commercial. I look at my friend, narcotics detective, and he's going like this. Dog's talking, man. And I'm like, but this is that we have to find the medium. And I chose to laugh at the talking dog for 17 years. And that's the path I went down.
Yeah. One of my other favorite phenomenons in this sort of like language and the way it gets attached to, various culture battles is I have some incredibly intelligent friends who encountered words in books and comic books when they're very young, and they sometimes mispronounce them because
it's on page. Yeah.
It's on page, and they all I encountered Halcyon, which I love, in a James Bond book, and I thought that it looked cool, but I thought it was Halcyon because I was young and dumb and I never heard anybody say it. And then that led to some cultural embarrassment as well. But I think for me, ultimately, the way I try to use language is I love words because I grew up encountering them in books and comic books. I use them and think about them from a writerly perspective. And I tried not to be too concerned about what is the signifier of who will think that word is too big or too small, or who will make fun of me if I pronounce it slightly differently. And I just try to use the words that I want to use because I enjoy them. And ultimately, the whole point of creating a word is because there's nothing else that means exactly that. And I have spent so much time in writing finding what is the exact word that I mean to communicate this thing, that when I find it, like, I was always shaky on the word didactic. But then I kept repeating myself on ForceCenter to say that George Lucas designed Star Wars to be a morality tale that actually teaches us lessons. That's didactic is meant to teach. So I say didactic fairly often because it's convenient. It's one word that encapsulates this idea. So I try my best to just say, what word do I truly want to use to communicate? There are some situations in times where, like, if I say didactic, I think that's going to cause me some problems. So I'll roll it back. But in general, just try to be myself.
What if a talking dog said didactic?
I would love that. I would love that. Now, is this a mercurial talking dog? All right. We always like to talk about the bigger things that going on within the question. But Jared asked us, hey, what are our favorite words? Ken has aforementioned. Jennifer, what do you have for some favorite words?
I'm going to bring it back to Star Wars, and because it's like a secret language that we all know, right? So like Wampa, Tauntaun, Rodian, like, and this is another thing. I'm a Star Wars word nerd because I love knowing that you don't capitalize the creatures, Tauntaun, Wampa, Port, but you do capitalize the alien species like a Rodian or a Hutt or, Ewoks, which often causes some confusion. I love knowing the planets. Coruscant, how do you spell Tatooine? 2 O's, right? 1 T. How do you spell Alderaan? There's 2 A's. Like, I love this. It's something, and it's also, I mean, when I was younger, I would spend hours at the bookstores, like, studying this just because it was fun. And then when I started becoming a contributor for StarWars.com, I was like, oh, shoot, I got to know this. I got to know all these, the Star Wars grammar, the Star Wars language. Otherwise, someone's going to write an angry comment, or my editor will usually catch it. But yeah, I love the Star Wars words and the different languages that the characters speak.
Yeah, no, I mean, the naming conventions of Star Wars are hugely powerful for what is pleasing to say and what different sounds in different cultures evoke a specific thing. I would say one of my favorite words is Vader. Darth Vader in particular, but just Vader by itself. It is a trope in science fiction fantasy that, certain sounds are villainous, V's and X's and S's and all that. But Vader, I think all of my favorite words are connected by they're fun to say by themselves, but they also have saying them feels like the thing they are. I like visceral because it sounds like a word that just cut you and you're bleeding. and it's related to it. I love cathartic because it's a word that comes out as a sigh of it. It's cathartic. You can just breathe it out. And I love Vader for that same reason, because how many different times has he appeared, or he's going to appear, and the name lends itself to being said with such a menace. If you start strong with a V and then bam, it's like the shadow, and then he arrives of Vader. Yeah, I love Vader. Last thing I'll say, and I'll kick it back. There's a live version that was played on the radio of Guns N' Roses doing their "A Knock on Heaven's Door" cover, and Axl Rose is getting the audience to sing along. And I didn't understand what he was saying at the time. He's like, "Let's make this last one really loud. Let's make it so loud they have to pull the Vaders back." And I was like, "That's so cool. What did he say?" I eventually realized he was saying faders, the level on the board, so as to not blow out. But at first he's just like, he can't be talking about Darth Vader. I don't know what he's saying, but it sounds so cool. Let's make him have to play the Vaders back. What? Yeah. So those are a few of mine. Jennifer, any other favorite words for you that you wanted to share?
No. Vader, doesn't that mean like father in German? Is that true?
In Dutch, I believe.
Dutch, that's it.
Yeah. But
that's fun. That's fun.
Yeah,
that's why language is fun.
It's just great to say. Ken, any other favorite words besides aforementioned?
Two that popped to mind, similar to what you're describing with visceral and cathartic. I love affable, because affable just seems like he's an affable guy. It's a fun word to hang out with, and so is he. That's what I like that one. And then this one, I think it was used in The Simpsons. I think it was Mr. Burns. And I've known about it before, but ever since then, it's been a favorite of mine, and that's ragamuffin. Just to but then you always have to make sure you look up where a lot of those words come from. It's sometimes the lesson of the last 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, right.
Hey, way, that one you're saying. But that aside.
Right.
Two last ones for me. One of my favorite professors in college who taught a comic theory class, theory of comedy, that meant a lot to me. He was kind of riffing on the your people expect you to come out of college with big words. So here's my favorite big word. Memorize it. And it's crepuscular, which means anything sort of relating to Twilight or of Twilight. So you could look at Luke in Last Jedi and say he's in his crepuscular years. He is in his Twilight.
Twilight.
Yeah, and it's fun when you take away the baggage of any sort of cultural thing, like Jared's talking about, to just explore words and have fun with them. I've been doing in the last year, Jennifer, what you were describing doing as a kid is actively taking the time to stop when I encounter a word I didn't know. So when I was young, I'd kind of be like, I don't want to stop reading, or I feel foolish, I don't know this word. I'm learning lots of fun words. The last one I'll share is I come across this word, cynosure. It's spelled Cynosure, and it's a noun for being the center of attention.
Whoa.
So it would be like we were all at the party, then Ken started eating the pizza and became the cynosure, because now everybody's looking at Ken while he eats pizza.
Substitute shrimp cocktail, and you've got most parties I'm at.
There you go. There you go. His shrimp eating made him the cynosure of the party.
Hey, why's all the shrimp gone? Ken's the cynosure of this party.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, great conversation. Any final thoughts from either of you about favorite words?
No, I love it. This is a fun conversation. I think it gets into a lot of serious social conversations, but at the end of the day, this was a fun conversation. The aforementioned words were great.
Yeah.
There you go. Nailed it.
Yeah. Nailed it. I love it. Sorry. And that's why as an American, I love British culture, because I get to learn different, meanings for the words that I know, like a lift, obviously, the telly. I love that kind of stuff. It's fun.
Yeah. Aluminium. Damn fun to say. Damn fun to say. Aluminium. That is a roller coaster of a word right there.
I love that. Yeah.
All right. We are going to wrap up this episode of Questions of Everything. Ken, you want to let people know where they can find us?
I absolutely do. Send all your fancy 2-bit words to us over on Twitter at ForceCenter Pod or Threads. A lot of fancy words used on Twitter these days, right? Facebook page is ForceCenter Podcast. We are on Instagram as well. YouTube, subscribe over there. Help us continue to grow that. Merch available at tpublic.com/user/ForceCenter. And you can support us directly through set up top, patreon.com/ForceCenter. Help us reach 400 paid supporters and then unlock a movie commentary. You can follow me at Ken Napzok or go to my website, kennapzok.com for more. Jen, where can they follow you?
You can follow me on Instagram, YouTube at Jennifer Landa, all lowercase, or TikTok at Jennifer Landa 1138.
And Joseph, wonderful conversation today. Tough one, Elias. Great question, but take us home.
Yes, a tough, difficult, challenging question, but really fun to discuss, as well as getting to say shrimp a lot in our discussion of words. You can find me on all the social media at Joseph Scrimshaw, and if you're interested in subscribing to my newsletter, you can find that by going to buttondown.email/finishyourmonsters. That is it. We have answered the questions of everything.